Kaelen's hands were shaking as he typed the words every father prays they'll never have to say. "I love you, my angel." His 7-year-old daughter was on an operating table. Brain tumor, stage 3. The next 6 hours would decide if she lived or died. He hit send. Then his blood turned to ice. The message didn't go to Alara. It went to her. The woman who destroyed careers for sport. The billionaire who'd never shown a single human emotion in 5 years. His boss, Sloane Sterling. For 3 hours, nothing happened. Then at 2 a.m., his security camera pinged. She was standing at his door, soaking wet, holding a yellowed document in her trembling hands. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked with 28 years of buried pain. "I know what you're about to lose, because I already lost everything." What happened next would shatter everything Kaelen thought he knew about the woman who ruled his world. And it all started with 3 words sent to the wrong person. Sometimes your worst mistake is someone else's only salvation. Kaelen Vance's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his phone. The hospital hallway smelled like bleach mixed with something else he couldn't name. Maybe fear, maybe desperation, maybe both. His daughter Alara had been wheeled into surgery 23 minutes ago, and every second since then felt like an hour. Brain tumor. Stage 3. The words kept echoing in his head like a sentence he couldn't escape. Dr. Silas Thorne, the neurosurgeon with the calm voice and steady hands, had explained everything 2 days ago in an office that was too bright and too cold. The tumor was growing faster than anyone had predicted. They had a narrow window to operate. Tonight was that window. After tonight, the odds would drop significantly. Kaelen had nodded through the whole conversation, trying to appear strong for Alara, trying to understand medical terms that felt like a foreign language. Glioblastoma, resection, post-operative complications. All he really heard was that his 7-year-old daughter might not wake up. Now he sat alone on a plastic chair that squeaked every time he shifted his weight, and the sound made him want to scream. The waiting room was mostly empty. An elderly man slept in the corner, his mouth open, soft snores punctuating the silence. A young couple sat near the vending machines, holding hands and whispering prayers. Kaelen felt like he was drowning. His phone buzzed in his pocket, vibrating against his leg like an angry wasp. He pulled it out and saw another email from work. From her. Sloane Sterling. His CEO. The woman they called the Statue of Manhattan because in 5 years no one had ever seen her smile, laugh, or show a single human emotion. See, she ran Sterling Innovations like a military operation. Efficient, cold, merciless. Last month she'd fired a senior vice president because he used the wrong font in a presentation to investors. The man had worked there for 12 years. Sloane didn't even blink when she handed him his termination letter in front of the whole executive team. And now she wanted the quarterly projections by midnight. Midnight. While Kaelen's entire world was hanging by a thread in an operating room 3 floors above him. He stared at the email, his jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Subject: Q4 projections. Urgent. Kaelen, I need the revised numbers on my desk by midnight. No exceptions. The board meeting is at 8 a.m. and I won't go in unprepared. Handle it. SS. No. How are you doing? No. Is everything okay? Just a man's wrapped in corporate ice. Kaelen wanted to throw his phone across the room. Instead, he closed his eyes and tried to breathe the way the hospital social worker had taught him. In for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Out for 4 counts. It didn't help. Nothing helped. He opened his messages and scrolled until he found Alara's name. The last text she'd sent him was from this morning, right before they gave her the pre-surgery medication that made her drowsy and confused. Daddy, I'm scared. 3 words that had broken him into 1,000 pieces. He'd held her small hand in his and whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep. "You're the bravest person I know, Angel. You're going to do great. I'll be right here when you wake up, I promise." She'd looked at him with those big brown eyes that saw right through every lie he tried to tell. "What if I don't wake up?" Kaelen had pulled her close and held her until the nurses said it was time. Now, sitting in this cold waiting room with buzzing fluorescent lights overhead, he needed to say something to her, even if she couldn't read it, even if she was unconscious on an operating table. He needed her to know. His fingers moved across the screen, muscle memory taking over. "I'm so proud of you, Alara. You're so brave, so strong. I'll be right here when you wake up, I promise. I love you more than anything in this world. You're my whole heart, baby girl. You're going to be okay. I know you are. I love you, my angel." He pressed send. Then his entire body went cold. The name at the top of the screen wasn't Alara. It was Sloane Sterling, his boss, the woman who had fired people for typos, the woman who once made an intern cry during a budget meeting because he'd rounded a number wrong, the woman who never, ever showed weakness or tolerance for anyone else's. And Kaelen had just sent her the most vulnerable, raw, emotional message of his entire life. His breath stopped. His vision blurred. He stared at the phone screen like it had betrayed him, like it had deliberately sabotaged his life. No, 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 no. This couldn't be happening. Delete. He needed to delete it. His fingers fumbled with the phone, trying to unsend, trying to recall, trying to do anything to take back those words. But the message showed read 11:47 p.m. in small gray letters beneath the text. She'd already seen it. Kaelen felt like he was going to be sick. His career was over. 5 years of clawing his way up from junior analyst to senior project lead. 5 years of late nights and early mornings. 5 years of missed soccer games and school plays because he was trying to prove himself, trying to build something stable for Alara after her mother left them when she was 2 years old. All of it gone, destroyed by one moment of distraction, one slip of the thumb, one message sent to the wrong person at the worst possible time. He wanted to scream. He wanted to punch the wall. He wanted to cry. Instead, he just sat there, frozen, his phone still in his hand, waiting for the inevitable. Minutes crawled by. The elderly man in the corner shifted in his sleep. The young couple left, holding each other as they walked toward the elevators. Kaelen checked his phone. No response from Sloane. No angry email. No text telling him to clean out his desk. Nothing. Maybe she was deciding exactly how to destroy him. Maybe HR was already drafting the termination paperwork. Maybe she was calling the board right now to tell them about her unstable employee who'd sent inappropriate messages to the CEO. Kaelen's mind spiraled through every terrible possibility. He'd lose his job. He'd lose his health insurance. Alara's medical bills were already astronomical. The surgery alone cost more than he made in a year. Dr. Thorne had been kind enough to work out a payment plan, but without insurance, they'd be buried in debt for the rest of their lives. How could he have been so stupid? How could he have been so careless? He put his head in his hands and tried not to completely fall apart. The hospital around him buzzed with quiet activity, nurses walking past with clipboards, a janitor mopping the floor at the far end of the hallway, a doctor in scrubs grabbing coffee from the break room. Life just kept going, even when Kaelen's felt like it was ending. His phone buzzed again. He looked down, his heart racing, but it wasn't Sloane. It was a notification from his building's security app. Motion detected at front door. 2:03 a.m. Kaelen frowned. Who would be at his apartment at 2 in the morning? He opened the app and pulled up the camera feed from his front door. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. A woman stood in the hallway outside his apartment. Tall, maybe 5'10", wearing a black trench coat that was soaked through from the rain. Her dark hair hung wet around her shoulders. Her face was partially hidden by the angle of the camera, but Kaelen would recognize that posture anywhere. The straight spine, The perfect composure, even drenched and standing in a dingy apartment hallway at 2 in the morning. Sloane Sterling, his CEO, at his door. Kaelen's mind went blank. What kind of person shows up at their employee's home in the middle of the night? What kind of person does that while said employee's daughter is in surgery? Was she here to fire him in person? Was she that cruel? His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. I know you're at the hospital. I'm leaving something at your door. Don't open it until you're ready. Kaelen read the message 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Don't open it until you're ready. Ready for what? Termination papers? A lawsuit? His hands were shaking again as he typed back. Why are you doing this? He watched the 3 dots appear on the screen, then disappear, then appear again. Finally, a response came through. Because I know what it's like to lose everything, and I won't let you lose her. Kaelen stared at the words. They didn't make any sense. Sloane Sterling didn't care about people. She cared about quarterly earnings and market share and beating the competition. She'd built a billion-dollar company by being ruthless, not compassionate. Everyone knew that. Everyone had stories. But something in those words felt different, raw, real, like they'd been torn out of somewhere deep and painful. Before Kaelen could respond, he heard footsteps in the hallway. He looked up and saw Dr. Silas Thorne walking toward him. The surgeon had pulled down his surgical mask and his expression was carefully neutral. Kaelen's legs almost gave out. He stood up, gripping the back of the plastic chair for support. Mr. Vance, Dr. Thorne said quietly when he reached him. Kaelen couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, just waited for the words that would either save him or destroy him. The surgery went longer than we expected, Thorne continued, his voice measured and calm. We ran into some complications with the tumor's location. It was wrapped around blood vessels we couldn't see clearly on the scans. Kaelen's vision started to blur. But, Thorne said, and Kaelen focused on that single word like it was a lifeline. Ilara is stable. She's in recovery now. The relief that crashed through Kaelen was so intense, he actually staggered. He grabbed the wall to keep from collapsing. Stable, he repeated, his voice breaking. She's okay? She's going to be okay? Dr. Thorne's expression softened slightly. She's fighting. And she's strong. But I need you to understand. The tumor was more aggressive than the initial scans indicated. We removed approximately 78% of it, but there's some remaining tissue we couldn't safely extract without risking permanent damage. Kaelen nodded, trying to process the information through the fog of exhaustion and relief. What does that mean? It means the next 72 hours are critical. If she remains stable, if there's no swelling or bleeding, then we'll move forward with targeted radiation therapy to address the remaining tumor cells. But right now, we watch and we wait. Can I see her? She's still heavily sedated. Give us about 30 minutes to get her settled in the ICU, then you can sit with her. Dr. Thorne squeezed Kaelen's shoulder, a brief human gesture that somehow meant everything, and walked away. Kaelen stood in the hallway, his whole body trembling. She was alive. His little girl was alive. That was all that mattered right now. Everything else, his job, his mistake, Sloane Sterling standing at his door in the rain, could wait. He checked his phone again. Another message from the unknown number. Is she okay? How did Sloane know the surgery was over? How did she know the exact moment to ask? Kaelen typed back with shaking fingers. She's stable. The next few days are critical, but she made it through surgery. Why do you care? The response came within seconds. Because I was you once, and no one showed up for me. Kaelen stared at those words. This didn't sound like the Sloane Sterling he knew. The woman who'd built walls so high around herself that no one could get close. The woman who treated emotions like weaknesses to be eliminated. He needed answers. He needed to know what she'd left at his door. He texted his neighbor Marcus, who lived 3 doors down and had a spare key to Kaelen's apartment for emergencies. "Hey man, I know it's late. Can you do me a favor? Check my front door. Someone left something there." Marcus replied almost immediately. "Everything okay? Where are you?" "Hospital. Long story. Can you check?" "On it." Kaelen paced the waiting room, unable to sit still. His mind wouldn't stop racing. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Finally, his phone buzzed with a photo from Marcus. A manila envelope. Thick, official-looking. The kind lawyers use. Kaelen's stomach dropped. "Want me to open it?" Marcus texted. "No, can you bring it to the hospital? Mount Sinai, room 407. "You sure you're good?" "I don't know yet, but I need to see what's inside." "Be there in 20. Kaelen sat down and put his head in his hands. Everything was happening too fast. His daughter was alive but not out of danger. His boss had shown up at his apartment in the middle of the night. And somewhere in that envelope was an answer to a question he didn't even know he was asking. A nurse with kind eyes and tired features appeared in the waiting room doorway. Her scrubs were covered in cartoon characters that Alara would have loved. "Mr. Vance?" Kaelen stood up so fast the plastic chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Yes, that's me. Your daughter is settled in the ICU now. You can come see her." Kaelen followed the nurse down a long corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered occasionally, casting strange shadows on the pale green walls. Everything smelled sterile and cold. They passed other rooms with half-closed doors. Kaelen caught glimpses of other families sitting vigil beside other hospital beds. Other stories of fear and hope playing out in parallel to his own. The nurse stopped at room 407 and pulled back a curtain. "She's still very sedated," the nurse said softly. "Don't be alarmed by all the equipment. Everything you see is normal post-operative monitoring." Kaelen stepped inside, and his heart broke all over again. Alara looked so impossibly small in that hospital bed. Her head was wrapped in white bandages. Tubes and wires ran from her arms to various machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical precision. An IV drip fed clear fluid into her left hand. A ventilator tube had been removed, which the nurse explained was a good sign. She was breathing on her own. Her face was peaceful, like she was simply sleeping after a long day at school, but the purple circles under her eyes told a different story. So did the way her small chest rose and fell with shallow, careful breaths. Kaelen pulled the visitor's chair as close to the bed as the medical equipment would allow. He reached out and took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV line. Her skin felt cool to the touch. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You did it. You're so incredibly brave. I'm right here, just like I promised. I'm not going anywhere." He sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, watching her breathe, counting every rise and fall of her chest, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the scatter of freckles across her nose that reminded him so much of her mother before everything fell apart. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. Finally, he pulled it out, ready to silence it completely. But the notifications weren't from work. They were from Marcus. "In the lobby. Where should I meet you?" Kaelen glanced at Alara one more time, then stepped into the hallway. He texted Marcus the floor and room number, then walked to the elevators to meet him. Marcus arrived 5 minutes later, still wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, his keys jangling in his hand. He held out the manila envelope like it might explode. "You look like hell, man," Marcus said, his eyes full of concern. "I feel worse than that." "Alara going to be okay?" Kaelen's throat tightened. "They got most of the tumor out. Next few days will tell us more. It's a waiting game now." Marcus pulled him into a brief, tight hug, the kind that said everything words couldn't. "She's tough. She's your kid. She'll fight. Thanks for bringing this." Marcus looked at the envelope in Kaelen's hands. "What is it?" "I don't know yet. Probably nothing good." "You need anything else? Coffee? Food? Someone to sit with you?" "No, man. You should go home. Get some sleep. I'm okay." Marcus looked skeptical but nodded. "Call me if you need anything. And I mean anything. Even if it's 3 in the morning and you just need to talk." "I will." Marcus left and Kaelen stood in the hallway, holding the envelope. His name was written on the front in handwriting that looked rushed and uneven. Not the crisp, precise signature he'd seen on corporate memos from Sloane Sterling. This looked almost frantic. He walked to a small waiting area near the ICU, empty at this hour, and sat down under the harsh lights. His hands were shaking as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a single document, yellowed with age. The paper felt fragile, like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. It was a birth certificate, dated 28 years ago. Kaelen's eyes scanned the information. Mother, Sloane Marie Sterling. Father, unknown. Child, female. Name, Lily Grace Sterling. Date of birth, March 15th, 1997. And then, stamped in red ink across the bottom, deceased. Date of death, September 22nd, 1997. Age, 6 months. Kaelen's hands went numb. He read it again, slower this time, making sure he understood what he was seeing. Sloane Sterling had a daughter who died as an infant. 28 years ago, when Sloane would have been barely 17 years old. Attached to the birth certificate with a paperclip was a handwritten letter. The paper was different, newer, but still worn at the edges like it had been carried around for a while. The handwriting was the same shaky, uneven script from the envelope. Kaelen's heart pounded as he began to read. Kaelen, I don't expect you to understand this. I barely understand it myself. I've spent 28 years trying not to think about it, trying not to feel it, and I've gotten very good at that. Too good, maybe. I was 17 when I got pregnant, still in high school, still living under my father's roof and his rules. He was already building what would become Sterling Innovations, already obsessed with legacy and power and control. When I told him about the baby, he gave me 2 choices. Give her up for adoption and come work for him after college, building the empire he'd started. Or keep her and lose everything, my college fund, my home, my family, all of it. I chose to keep her. I don't know if it was bravery or stupidity or just the naive certainty of a 17-year-old who thought love could conquer anything, but I chose her. For 6 months, Lily was my entire world. I worked 3 jobs to afford a studio apartment in Queens. I took night classes to finish high school. I was exhausted every single day, and I've never been happier in my life. She had your daughter's eyes, you know, that same light in them, that same way of looking at the world like everything was a miracle worth investigating. Then she got sick, bacterial meningitis. It came on so fast I didn't even realize what was happening at first. I thought it was just a fever. By the time I got her to the emergency room, it was already severe. The doctor said she needed to be admitted immediately. Specialized treatment, ICU care, antibiotics that cost more than I made in 3 months. I had no insurance, no savings, nothing. I called my father. I begged him for help. I promised I'd do anything, work for him forever, give up my life completely, whatever he wanted. He said he'd help, but only if I signed custody over to him first. He wanted to make sure I couldn't back out of our deal. I was desperate. I was terrified. I signed the papers he sent over. Then he told me he'd changed his mind, that Lily was my responsibility, not his, that I'd made my choice, and now I had to live with it. By the time I found a charity program that would help, by the time I got her into a hospital that would treat her without upfront payment, it was too late. She died in my arms at 3:47 in the morning on September 22nd, 1997. I was 18 years old, and I'd just lost the only thing that ever mattered to me. My father showed up at her funeral. He told me the offer still stood. come work for him, help build the company, and he'd make sure I never had to worry about money again. I said yes, not because I wanted to, but because I had nothing left to lose. I was already dead inside. I've spent 28 years building Sterling Innovations into what it is today. I've made billions of dollars. I've been on the cover of Forbes. I've won awards and accolades and respect from people I don't even like. And none of it has ever filled the hole that Lily left. I've spent 28 years building walls so high and so thick that nothing could ever hurt me again. I've perfected the art of not feeling, not caring, not connecting. I thought that was strength. But tonight, when I saw your text, those words, that love, that raw and unfiltered emotion, I realized I've been dead longer than my daughter ever lived. You wrote to Alara with the kind of love I had for Lily, the kind I lost, the kind I convinced myself didn't exist anymore because it was too painful to remember. I'm not at your door to fire you, Kaelen. I'm there because your accidental message reminded me what it feels like to be human. I'm there because you're the kind of father I wish I'd had the strength to keep being. I'm there because for the first time in 28 years, I felt something other than numbness. Whatever Alara needs, the best doctors, the best treatment, the best care money can buy, I'll make sure she gets it. Not because you work for me. Not because I'm trying to buy your silence or your loyalty. But because you love her the way I loved Lily. And that's the only thing in this world that still matters. I know this is a lot. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now. But I needed you to know the truth about who I am. About why your mistake meant something to me. Your greatest slip-up reminded me that I used to be someone worth knowing. Thank you for that. S. Kaelen read the letter twice, then a third time. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. Sloane Sterling wasn't a statue. She wasn't cold or heartless or cruel. She was a woman who'd lost everything that mattered and spent 3 decades building armor so thick that nothing could touch her again. She was a ghost haunting her own life. And somehow, his accidental text had cracked through that armor. Kaelen looked up from the letter, his vision blurry with tears he hadn't realized were falling. Through the window near the waiting area, he could see the hospital entrance, and standing just outside, under the overhang but still getting hit by sheets of rain blown sideways by the wind, was Sloane Sterling. Still wearing that black trench coat. Still standing perfectly straight, despite being soaked through. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. Just watching the building. Waiting. For what? Kaelen didn't know. He stood up, folded the letter carefully, and put it back in the envelope. Then he walked to the elevator and wrote it down to the ground floor. The automatic doors slid open, and the sound of rain immediately filled his ears. It was coming down harder now, turning the parking lot into a maze of puddles and streams. Kaelen stepped outside. The rain soaked through his shirt within seconds, cold and sharp against his skin. Sloane didn't move when she saw him. Didn't speak. Just looked at him with eyes that held more pain than any person should have to carry. "You didn't have to do this," Kaelen said, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Yes, I did." Her voice was different from the boardroom voice he knew. Softer. Broken. Human. "I read the letter," Kaelen said. She looked away, her jaw tight. "I'm sorry," Kaelen continued. "For Lily. For everything you went through. No one should have to carry that alone." Sloane's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Don't," she said, her voice sharp. "Don't give me sympathy I don't deserve." "You do deserve it." "No, I don't. I let her die. Your father let her die. You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. You were 18 years old." Sloane finally looked at him, and the anguish in her eyes was almost unbearable to witness. "I've spent 28 years building a company I don't even care about," she said. "Making money I don't need. Winning battles that don't matter. I thought if I became powerful enough, if I built something big enough, the pain would stop. But it never did. It never will." Kaelen took a step closer, Rain ran down his face, mixing with tears he couldn't stop. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Why now?" "Because your text reminded me what it feels like to be human, and it terrified me. I've spent 3 decades making sure I never feel anything that deeply again, and then you accidentally send me 3 sentences that broke through every wall I've ever built. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. That's what made it real. You weren't trying to manipulate me or impress me or get something from me. You were just a father loving his daughter, and I'd forgotten that kind of love still existed." They stood in the rain, 2 people carrying grief in different ways. "Come inside," Kaelen finally said. "You'll catch pneumonia out here." Sloane shook her head. "I shouldn't have come. I just needed you to know that Alara will have everything she needs, the best specialists, the best treatment, whatever it costs. I'll handle it." "That's not why you came." She looked at him sharply. "Then why did I?" "Because you're tired of being alone." The words hung between them like a challenge. Sloane's expression cracked just for a second before she forced it back into something harder. "I'm protecting you," she said. "From what?" "From me. From getting involved with someone who's forgotten how to feel anything real. You don't need that in your life. You don't need me. That's not your decision to make." "Yes, it is." She turned to leave, but Kaelen called after her. "Sloane." She stopped, but didn't turn around. "I don't know what you're looking for," Kaelen said, "and I don't know if I can help you find it, but I know that running away from it won't make it hurt less. It'll just make you lonelier." Sloane stood there for a long moment, rain pouring down around her. Then, without another word, she walked away, disappeared into the darkness and the storm. Kaelen watched her go, his heart heavy with something he couldn't name. Then he turned and went back inside. Back to the elevator. Back to the ICU. Back to Alara. He sat beside her bed again and took her hand. "You missed some excitement, Angel," he whispered. "But don't worry. I'll tell you about it when you wake up." At 6 in the morning, Dr. Thorne appeared in the doorway. Kaelen looked up, exhausted and anxious. "How is she?" Kaelen asked before the doctor could speak. Dr. Thorne pulled up Alara's chart on the tablet he was carrying. "Better than I expected, actually. Her vitals are strong. No signs of swelling or bleeding. Her body is responding well to the medication." Kaelen felt tears sting his eyes again. "So she's going to be okay? If she stays stable for another 48 hours, we'll move her out of intensive care and into a regular pediatric room. Then we can start planning the next phase of treatment." "Thank you," Kaelen said, his voice breaking. "Thank you so much." Dr. Thorne nodded and left. Kaelen put his head down on the edge of Alara's bed and cried. Not from sadness, from relief so overwhelming it had nowhere else to go. His phone buzzed. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. An email from Sloane Sterling. Subject: Leave of absence approved. Kaelen: Effective immediately. You are on paid leave for as long as you need. Your position will be waiting for you when you're ready to return. Focus on Alara. That's all that matters right now. Don't worry about the quarterly projections. Don't worry about work. Don't worry about anything except being there for your daughter. I mean that. SS. Kaelen stared at the email. This woman was full of contradictions. Cold and distant one moment, generous and human the next. He typed a response. Thank you. I don't know what to say except thank you. Her reply came within minutes. Don't thank me. Just be the father she needs. That's all the thanks I need. Kaelen put his phone away and looked at Alara. Her face was still peaceful, still fighting, still his whole world. And somewhere out there in the rainy Manhattan morning, Sloane Sterling was learning how to feel again. One painful step at a time. 2 days passed in a blur of beeping machines and hushed conversations with doctors. Alara remained stable. Her vitals improved slowly but steadily. On the second day, she opened her eyes for the first time, groggy and confused but awake. "Daddy?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Kaelen's heart nearly exploded. He leaned close, careful not to jostle any of the wires. "Hey, Angel. I'm right here. My head hurts." "I know, baby. The doctors are giving you medicine to help with that." She tried to smile, but winced instead. "Did I win?" Kaelen laughed through tears. "Yeah, sweetheart. You won." She closed her eyes again, drifting back to sleep. But she was fighting. And that was everything. On the third day, Dr. Thorne brought good news. "We're moving her to a regular room tomorrow. She's past the critical window." Kaelen felt a weight lift from his chest. That afternoon, a delivery arrived at the ICU nurses' station. A massive gift basket. Stuffed animals, books, art supplies, and a handwritten note. For Alara, from someone who wishes she could have been as brave. S. Kaelen stared at the note for a long time. Then he took a photo and texted it to Sloane's number. "She's going to love this. Thank you." Hours passed with no response. That evening, Dr. Thorne brought someone new to Alara's room. A woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes and silver-streaked hair. "Mr. Vance, this is Dr. Nadia Cross. She's a pediatric oncologist from Johns Hopkins." Kaelen stood up, confused. "I didn't request a specialist." Dr. Cross smiled gently. "Someone else did. I've reviewed Alara's case extensively. I'd like to oversee her treatment moving forward if you'll allow it." "I can't afford—" "There's no cost to you. Everything has been arranged." Kaelen's throat tightened. "Who arranged it?" "I'm not at liberty to say, but they care deeply about your daughter's recovery." After Dr. Cross left, Kaelen pulled out his phone. He texted Sloane. "Why are you doing all this?" This time, she responded quickly. "Because I couldn't save Lily, but maybe I can help save Alara." Kaelen sat down heavily in the chair beside Alara's bed. This woman was rewriting her own tragedy through his daughter. It should have felt strange, but somehow, it felt like grace. Over the next 2 weeks, Alara improved dramatically. The combination of Dr. Thorne's surgery and Dr. Cross's treatment plan was working. She was discharged with a strict medication schedule and follow-up appointments. Kaelen brought her home to their small apartment. Marcus helped set up a recovery space in the living room so Alara wouldn't have to climb stairs. Life slowly found a new rhythm. But Kaelen couldn't stop thinking about Sloane, about the letter, about the woman who'd built an empire on top of unprocessed grief. One evening, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Kaelen, it's Sloane." Her voice sounded different again. Uncertain. "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I'm stepping down as CEO of Sterling Innovations." Kaelen nearly dropped the phone. "What? Why?" "Because I've been running from Lily's death for 28 years, building a company I don't believe in, surrounding myself with people I don't trust, making decisions that make money but destroy souls." She paused. "I'm tired, Kaelen. I'm tired of being a ghost in my own life." "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. But I'm starting a foundation for families who can't afford medical care for their children. I'm calling it Lily's Light." Kaelen's eyes burned with tears. "That's beautiful." "I want Alara to be one of the first recipients, if you'll let me help. We're managing now, thanks to Dr. Cross. Give it to families who need it more." Sloane laughed softly. "I thought you'd say that." There was a long pause. "Can I ask you something?" Kaelen said. "Anything. That night at the hospital, what were you really looking for?" Sloane was quiet for so long Kaelen thought she'd hung up. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I was looking for proof that love still exists in this world, that someone, somewhere, was still fighting for something real instead of just surviving. And did you find it? Yes. I found it in a text message sent to the wrong person at exactly the right time. Kaelen smiled. I'm glad my mistake meant something. It meant everything. They talked for another hour, about Alara's recovery, about Sloane's plans for the foundation, about the weather and meaningless things that somehow felt meaningful. When they finally hung up, Kaelen felt something shift in his chest. This woman had spent nearly 3 decades convinced she didn't deserve happiness, and now she was taking her first steps toward finding it again. 3 weeks later, Kaelen took Alara to the park for the first time since her surgery. She was still weak, but insisted on going. I want to see the ducks, Daddy. He couldn't say no to that. They sat on a bench by the pond, feeding breadcrumbs to overeager geese. Mr. Vance? Kaelen turned. Sloane stood a few feet away. She looked completely different. Her hair was down, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She wore jeans and a simple sweater. No designer suit, no corporate armor, just a woman trying to figure out how to be human again. Sloane, Kaelen said, surprised but genuinely happy to see her. Alara looked up with curious eyes. Who's that, Daddy? A friend. Sloane smiled at Alara, a real smile that reached her eyes. Hi, you must be Alara. That's me. Are you the lady who sent all the toys? Sloane's eyes went glassy. I am. Thank you. The stuffed giraffe is my favorite. I named him Dr. Spots because he has spots and he makes me feel better. Sloane pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting tears. I'm so glad. Kaelen stood and walked closer. What brings you here? I was nearby. Thought I'd see how she was doing. She's doing amazing. Stronger every day. They watched Alara throw bread to the ducks, her laughter echoing across the pond. She's beautiful, Kaelen, Sloane said quietly. You're a good father. I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. Sloane turned to leave, but Kaelen stopped her. We're getting lunch at the diner down the street. Want to join us? She hesitated. I don't want to intrude. You're not. Alara would love the company, and honestly, so would I. Sloane looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she nodded. Okay, I'd like that. The diner was small and worn, with cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked in decades. But the pancakes were perfect, and the coffee was strong. Alara sat between Kaelen and Sloane, swinging her legs and talking non-stop. About school, about her friends, about the new book she was reading. Sloane listened with the kind of attention that made Alara glow. She asked questions that showed she actually cared about the answers. So you want to be a veterinarian when you grow up? Yes. I want to help animals that are sick, just like the doctors helped me. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. That's a beautiful dream, Alara. Don't ever let anyone tell you it's not possible. I won't. My daddy says I can do anything if I work hard enough. Sloane glanced at Kaelen. Your daddy is very wise. After lunch, they walked back to the park. Alara ran ahead, chasing pigeons with renewed energy. Thank you, Sloane said quietly. For what? For letting me be part of this, even just for an afternoon. You're welcome any time, Sloane. I mean that. She stopped walking and looked at him. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't sent that text? Kaelen thought about it. All the time. My whole life could have gone a different direction. Mine too. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. I think it was the best mistake either of us ever made. 3 months passed. Alara's follow-up scans came back clean. Dr. Cross was cautiously optimistic about her long-term prognosis. Kaelen returned to work part-time, but Sterling Innovations felt hollow without Sloane. The new CEO was efficient, but soulless. Everything Sloane used to be. Sloane, meanwhile, threw herself into Lily's Light Foundation. She personally reviewed every application, met with families, held babies in hospital waiting rooms. She was becoming the person she'd buried 28 years ago. One Saturday morning, Kaelen's phone rang. Sloane's number. "Hey," he answered. "Are you busy today?" "Just hanging out with Alara. Why?" "I want to show you something. Can you both meet me at Central Park? The Bethesda Fountain?" "Sure. Give us an hour." When they arrived, Sloane was standing by the fountain wearing a yellow sundress. Kaelen had never seen her in anything but black or gray. The color made her look younger, lighter. "You look happy," Kaelen said. "I'm getting there." She knelt down to Alara's level. "I have something for you, sweetheart." She handed Alara a small wooden box. Inside was a silver bracelet with a tiny giraffe charm. "It's beautiful," Alara gasped. "It reminded me of Dr. Spot's. I thought you might like it." Alara threw her arms around Sloane's neck. "Thank you. I love it." Sloane held her tight, tears streaming down her face. When Alara ran off to look at the fountain, Sloane stood and wiped her eyes. "I need to tell you something else," she said. "Okay." "The foundation is growing faster than I expected. We've already helped 43 families in 3 months." "That's incredible. But I need help. Someone who understands what it's like to fight for a child's life. Someone with a good heart and a clear head." Kaelen frowned, not understanding. "I want you to come work for the foundation. As my partner. Not my employee. My equal partner." Kaelen stared at her. "Sloane, I don't know anything about running a nonprofit. You know everything that matters. You know what real love looks like. You know what's worth fighting for. I have Alara to think about." "I know. That's why I'm offering flexible hours, full benefits, and a salary that will let you give her everything she needs without working yourself to death." Kaelen looked at Alara, who was laughing as she tossed pennies into the fountain. "Why me?" "Because your mistake saved my life. Now I want to spend the rest of it making sure other parents don't lose their children the way I lost Lily." Kaelen felt his throat tighten. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." That evening, Kaelen sat Alara down. "How would you feel if Daddy got a new job? One where I help other kids who are sick like you were?" Alara's eyes lit up. "Would Miss Sloane be there?" "Yeah, we'd work together." "I like her, Daddy. She has sad eyes, but she smiles now when she's with us." Kaelen pulled his daughter close. "You're pretty smart for 7 years old." "I know." The next morning, Kaelen called Sloane. "I'm in. When do I start?" He heard her breath catch. "Really?" "Really. But I have one condition." "Name it." "We find a way to help your father's other victims too. The families he destroyed to build his empire." Sloane was quiet for a long moment. "I'd like that. He doesn't deserve to have his legacy protected." "Then we have a deal." 6 months later, Lily's Light Foundation had helped over 200 families. They'd exposed Sterling Industries' former CEO for financial abuse and manipulation. Several families received settlements that changed their lives. Kaelen and Sloane worked side by side, building something that actually mattered. And somewhere along the way, they became more than partners. They became family. Not in a romantic way, neither of them was looking for that, but in the way that people who've survived darkness together become bound by unbreakable threads. 1 year after the accidental text, they held a gala for the foundation. Alara, now 8 and completely healthy, gave a speech about bravery. "My daddy says that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you fight anyway. And Miss Sloane is the bravest person I know because she's fighting to help kids like me every single day." Sloane stood up, tears streaming down her face, and hugged Alara tight. Later that night, after the guests had left, Kaelen and Sloane stood on the balcony overlooking the city. "Thank you," Sloane said. "For what?" "For sending that text. For being careless enough to make a mistake that saved 2 lives." Kaelen smiled. "I used to think it was the worst moment of my life. And now? Now I think maybe our mistakes are just prayers we don't know we're saying, and sometimes someone out there is desperate enough to hear them." Sloane looked at the city lights, her expression peaceful. "I spent 28 years building walls. You tore them down with 3 sentences. You did the rest yourself." She shook her head. "We did it together. You showed me what love looks like. I'm just trying to pass it on." Kaelen's phone buzzed. A message from Alara, who was with Marcus for the night. "Tell Miss Sloane I love her, and tell her Dr. Spot says goodnight." He showed Sloane the message. She pressed her hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Yes, you do. You deserve every bit of joy you've spent 3 decades denying yourself." They stood together in comfortable silence. 2 broken people who'd accidentally found each other. 2 lives rebuilt from the ashes of one simple mistake. And as the city sparkled below them, Kaelen thought about the moral he'd learned. Precision builds empires, but vulnerability builds homes. And sometimes your greatest slip-up is the answer to someone else's silent prayer. Because Sloane hadn't needed a perfect employee that night. She'd needed a reminder that love still existed. And Kaelen hadn't needed a heartless boss. He'd needed an angel in disguise, ready to catch him when he fell. Their accidental connection had saved them both. And now, they were saving others, one family at a time, proving that even in the darkest moments, even in our most careless mistakes, grace can find a way in. All you have to do is stay open to it, stay human, stay vulnerable, and trust that somewhere out there, someone needs exactly what you're accidentally offering. That night, Kaelen sent one final text to Sloane before bed. "Thank you for showing up in the rain. Thank you for being brave enough to feel again. Alara and I are lucky to know you." Her response came immediately. "I'm the lucky one. You gave me back my life. Now let's spend it giving life back to others." And that's exactly what they did. The end.
I wrote this story from the heart, and I know it's not perfect. Maybe I could have added a little more depth to some emotional moments, or shown more of their struggle before the happy ending. If there are any small mistakes or that parts rest, that's on me. I'm still learning and growing as a writer.